Okay, it looks like we're live. It says we're live. Nice to see you all here. Haven't been live in a while, at least me hosting, because I'm shadow banned or blocked or banned off all my channels all the time. And I have to reconfigure these things constantly and sort out what I'm doing. So, but Lorenzo had the idea that we should have another chat again because we really haven't had one in a while.
Backstage,
So,
according to the. Here we are.
and
All right.
no, here you are. I'm just going to add you in now because I wanted to be able to talk to you through our ideas. Well, really, it was your idea to bring up, the topic for today, and we like to go into various metaphysical realms and discussing things on deeper levels. That's kind of where we like to talk, or talk philosophy. And but Lorenzo, before we get into our cool topic today, why don't you tell the viewers, listeners, what you're up to and how your new now Agora is going, and all of your projects.
Sure. Hello,
And welcome.
everyone. Nice. And thank you. Nice to see you again. You can see everything we're doing at newagora.ca. I have a YouTube channel, The New Now. I've been working, since Amanda and I have chatted last over the last 6 months. I'm basically going beyond the self, getting into the metaphysical origins of everything. So stress is the topic we've talked about today, or illness, disease, those sorts of things. And of course, healing, becoming into your fullness. I hate to use the word whole because, discussing language and whole being HOLE as well. So putting all of the metaphysical vibrations, ideas, and physical and non-physical ways of expressing yourself so that you can make sure your dreams do come true as you see them, and health being, of course, a key one for all of us. So newagora.ca, the new now. I've got some new videos out called Beyond the Self, and I'm doing a project called Freedom's Calling You. I've got a 9-video course workshop, and all kinds of lovely things are gelling. But everything at newagora.ca, you can follow all my links. And hello, Amanda. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Lorenzo. It does seem as if we're in a lot of building of information and energy and cataloging. I mean, that's how I've been feeling of what am I supposed to do with my time and energy that's best served, which I'm constantly asking myself this question, because I have in my head about efficiency, where I feel that I'm here to achieve something. So there's a goal. Therefore, I keep asking my inner direction if I'm on task when I'm moving forward with things. And lately the tasks have been very tasky and edit like, and rewriting things, and really needing time to contemplate, to have clarity over next actions that are the best for the best outcomes.
Yeah,
So it's interesting. A lot of coursework and projects are being created now.
Yeah, I think there's just so much going on, and the two things a lot of people are losing track of. I know, and I just want to be very clear with anything I say in this conversation or this chat with anybody. I'm only always talking about myself, my own perspective, what I figured out for me, how I healed myself, and what's working for me. I can't say any of this is going to work for anybody because I haven't met you. I don't really know anybody beyond myself. Recently, as an example, I chatted with my father who's in his 80s, and he told me a week ago he spent the first 7 years of his life without seeing his father, right? And, his father was in the war. He was conscripted in Russia and Poland, and he was in a hospital because something or other happened. And, he's 84, and I just heard about this last week. So to me, that's showing me a lot of the judgments I had about my father and the kind of man he was and the kind of being he was and how he raised me, and, what he shared and didn't share was very erroneous as far as not having the full picture. Because I go, oh, that's crazy. You didn't see your father for 7 years. So, your mother raised you pretty much. And so that told me a lot about my life and him. And in some ways I was a little angry because I said, I wish he had told me back then when my grandparents were alive. I would have had a different relationship with them. I've heard my grandmother ran through the Russian forest fighting off bears to keep his son and daughter alive. Like all of these things that nobody told me about. My grandfather being in the hospital. So I never had a chance to understand my ancestors and who I was. And it really was a poor reflection on myself for being able to understand myself. We're getting back to the metaphysical origins of stress. As I grew up, when I was a young man and a middle-aged man, and now, an older man. And it's allowing me, by getting the full picture, to see what I need to see for myself. So bringing this all down, what I've been studying is for two things: is understanding yourself, which is key to healing, and I mean the full picture, and then understanding possibility, or you could tie that into imagination and what's possible for you. Because if you don't know what's possible, you can't ask for it. And if you don't put something in your imagination, you can't make it real. And if you don't understand yourself fully, and I mean, right down to the core of your cells and your toes and everything Amanda's talked about and I've talked about, then you really can't even understand what it is you might need to ask for in relation to what you feel, from wherever that feeling is coming from, is missing in your life. Or, as we're looking at healing, something missing, you figure something needs to be put back inside or taken out or put together. And, so we come back full circle to healing ourselves and the metaphysical origins of such, which is basically, I would say, just your energetic origins of you and your life from conception to now.
Yeah, and possibly before that, by the sounds of the generational trauma lineage, where you just kind of dove in there. Because when you broached the topic, that was where a lot of my mind went with: why do we feel stressed? What are the sources of stress? What are the underpinnings of the emotions of the stress? And what happens to us that we can't seem to close off the stresses that we've experienced? And a lot of them could be hard to close off when you don't have that ancestral connection and you don't understand where you've come from and whom did what in your family lineage. I do not have that connection either. My lineage all got broken off. I know some things that are important to the way that I think that I see my lineage and my family. Then we need the stories to often fill in the blanks of their traumas and what we took on. Because if they couldn't close it, I feel that in our holographic manner, probably through water memory, I would imagine. I mean, how like the mechanism of genetic trauma stored memory would either be water or water imprinting upon something that gets communicated across
I mean,
one to the next, right? Something like this.
well,
And or electrical. I guess it could also be explained electrically, but I still feel like water is a big component in genetic memory and memory in general. So I feel like it would be involved, and
we
that we
spend the
can carry it and not understand it because we
we
can't
spend the
see the
first
lineage.
Yeah, well, 9-10 months, right? Our first 9-10 months of our life is spent in water, right? The embryonic fluid, raised in our mother and picking up that vibration. And, I don't know about, your lineage. You mentioned you don't have the full picture, but my father never even met his grandparents. Again, this was something I didn't know until I talked with him recently. I said, my father's getting up there. He's actually, in Ontario where you are. And I've been considering visiting, but I haven't really felt like traveling for various shenanigan reasons we don't need to get into here. So he told me this experience, and he never met his grandparents. And even on one side, they don't know who the grandmother is. It might have been, it might not have been. I've heard some alternative historical perspectives on orphans and orphan trains and all those other things that have come across the internet over the last little while, going back and then not being able to find your true roots, whatever those reasons happen to be, why you don't have them, but without being able to pick up the full picture, all you have, as Amanda said, which I do agree with, is you have your electrical impulses, you have your energy, you have your memory, and you have your gut feelings on things. So without that working very well, you probably cannot even, as I've seen for myself, figure out why you're stressed, and what's going on and what you need to heal, like why your arm wasn't working, why your foot is, why you're having trouble sleeping, all of these things, which are a direct reflection And metaphysical just means beyond the physical, really. If we're looking at a definition, meta is more than. So, so understanding beyond your physical ailments, what's going on, whether they're emotional or ancestral, or, there could obviously be a nutritional, which is an easy one I figure to figure out, environmental, all of those things which have an effect on your health and your wealth and your well-being, and more importantly, on what you need to do so that you can get to a point of even understanding what you want to do.
Yeah, I'm just gonna mute your mic. I don't know. Someone is saying there was some echo, so I'm playing around. I'll wave at me or something. Yeah. So what you were getting into, I was a little bit distracted trying to deal with this audio problem, but what I think you were going into was about the other aspects of stress, right, on the body, like staying in a stress response long term, have other determinants of health. There's other aspects that you can control in your life. But really, the foundational stuff is important, which is the completing the stress loop inside your body. I mean, I would say if someone was in full trauma and they had all these bad habits, then yes, I would be working with them to try to nail down better habits and come off of the adaptations of coping mechanisms that they've gone into now, with a constant running stress that they can't put to rest. So they can't close off the stress. They're running additive stress. They go to counselors. They repeat the story over and over again to other people, which re-traumatizes them further. I don't recommend that type of talk therapy. I actually think it does more damage. And then they've re-traumatized and even rewritten the story possibly, which makes it more convoluted. But even if they had all those habits and all these coping mechanisms, maybe some of them failing, I would be working with them to do that closure in either TRE, trauma release exercises, somatic experiencing, some sort of sound therapy, encouraging them to express some sort of emotion somewhere, whether they're crying, whether they're shaking, whether they're doing yoga till their legs shake, whatever it is, to physically mobilize the chemical stress response that they're holding in their muscles. And they'll begin to at least be able to feel like they have some measure of control going on, because usually a lot of the mechanisms of adaptation are based on trying to gain some sort of sense of control over what's happening in their world and how they're feeling. They don't really have an anchor to, and they're just seeking answers and solutions that might not be the right ones, but they're still trying to find ways to self-soothe and get out of that fight or flight or the freeze, state, which gets into dissociation. And then when I've worked with people at this level, a lot of the times there's not even really conscious communication happening, meaning that they're in such a stressed place. There's not been silence enough for them to actually contemplate where they're at enough to even speak to it. And that's why I think a really good place for us to begin is the physical, is actually shake it out through physical, no matter on where, what level, and how, and it got here, to do something like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't know what your problem is, obviously, like you say, you go back to your coping mechanisms, like why you're drinking too much or why you're eating too much or, why you're jogging too much, even. Like if you're just doing something to avoid the pain, you're never going to heal the pain. And, as you mentioned, I would say, of course, detoxing is probably essential for anybody. Best place to begin if you don't know what's going on, right, is to cut sugar out of your system or to cut pollution out of your system, to cut stress, anger, all of these things to get a colonic, obviously, or 100 colonics. I can't recommend those enough as far as what could be. I'm not a doctor whatsoever, but I know getting the shit out seems to be the best solution for just about anything. I mean, if you're backed up and you're poisoning yourself, and your body's re-stressing itself over and over and over because, you've got, I've heard that, too many simple sugars, obviously, they get stored in your fat. And, I'm probably preaching to the choir by talking to you and your viewership here that, know the basics of health and, what's good for their body and what's not. But if you don't even know what your heart is asking for, maybe this is where, again, this is what I found, where all your stresses come from. I mean, we could get into the recapitulation. It's a Toltec maneuver of just understanding your life, who you are, where your masks came from, how you developed your personality, what happened when you were growing up. I can turn this back to when I chatted with my father about, I didn't think he was a strong enough man. Okay, so as an example, or my mother was too overbearing. And then, when I found out recently that, my mother was almost an orphan, and my father didn't have his father, and all his grandparents, siblings all got supposedly killed or disappeared or whatever, for various reasons, 80 years ago or 75 years ago, you get into a place of forgiveness for your ancestors. You go, I understand my father had this challenge and my mother had this challenge. So instead of, a key here, Amanda, I think, is then you put your blame fingers down, right? Because then you pick up the responsibility of healing yourself. It's not my father's fault. He wasn't a strong enough man. It's not my mother's fault. She was too overbearing. It's not my, whatever, my grandparents' fault that they didn't show me love, or whatever reasons people have for blaming other people for their problems. And when that gets put down, then I get to see, when I'm gaining responsibility for my understanding myself, is that whatever problems I have are my fault, are my responsibility, 100%. It doesn't matter bad things happened when I was 3, 4, or 5. It doesn't matter my mother fed me sugar till my head almost exploded when I in my teens. It doesn't matter that my father was a distant father and working all the time. What really matters now is how I see myself, what I'm feeding myself, and what I feel is good potential for myself moving forward. And that's how I start to heal myself, by understanding my heart and realizing I really do love my parents, right? I really do love my body. I really do love the potential that I can see growing if I want to make a new dream. And by that, I mean a new choices for Amanda and I chatted a little bit about where to live, how to live, vocations, if you like, relationships, all these things that I would say have to be put on the altar of sacrifice, because maybe they have to change. Maybe your relationships have to change, your diet, your physical location, the way you see yourself and the way you see others, before you can get through to that metaphysical healing, beyond the physical, and put all of that in order, so that maybe even from there, your next steps can become more clear to you as to what you need to do to heal yourself. Since this conversation, I would say, I guess, is about healing your heart and how to move yourself forward with a nice, loving feeling.
Yeah. And when, and I think it can go top down or bottom up in a lot of cases. I guess it really is so unique to the way that the information becomes uncovered for you. I started to study astrology when I was in my early teens. So I've been self-reflective for a very long time, trying to study aspects of my personality and why I'm the way that I am, and who shaped me, or what experience shaped me, or what need that got unmet drove me to behave a certain way versus another way I might have behaved if that need wasn't presented the way it was, or how I can get different perspectives on the same thing that I might have memories come again and again of, that I might feel I haven't solved, or I haven't put to rest, or been able to complete or understand what happened in that scenario. Maybe there was no communication, or there's just imagination poured over scenarios and you don't have clarity, right? These sorts of things. But really, the idea is, or the end goal of any which way you come into assessing your levels of stress and how you are metaphysically, and actually metaphysical is really a philosophy of trying to understand the root causation, the mental emotional aspects of why you are feeling physically unwell. Metaphysics is really, you could call it or compare it to German New Medicine in some ways, as far as like a philosophy of trying to understand things from other energies, rather than just the physical body itself, and why the physical body is unwell based on those concerns, right? And we're trying to really, as a goal, eliminate blame and victim mentality and shame, because it gives us power and responsibility to feel the way we feel. Like, we're allowed to feel that feeling. We seem to punish ourselves for having feelings that are maybe not accepted by other people, and we keep that inside, and that then festers, and we lose a lot of joy and peace and love in our lives when we do that, and we can't seem to change the thoughts and the thinking around it. And so this might be like a stress anxiety level, but really underpinning that is anger and resentment. There are all kinds of addictions, as we alluded to, could be really severe physical manifestations of that, like ulcers or headaches, or sleep disorders, and this sort of thing, right? And but ultimately, it's the inner mental cause that's driving the whole thing, because and you really can't discipline yourself out of it all the time. You can a little bit, but it will just keep coming back, because it's really about releasing the need to for that stress, to the need for that addiction, the need for whatever the thing that's feeling like it's feeding you. And when that illusion of that need, or whatever the underpinning need, is gone or satisfied, then the symptom will disappear. You don't have to really um, discipline yourself away from smoking, and like in that way. You just have to understand, why are you doing that? What is the level of the emotion that you don't want to feel because it's too painful to feel it? Anger can come up in different ways. It's really anger and fear that are the two mental patterns that are contributing to all the disease. I mean, primarily, right? So anger is irritation, frustration, criticism, resentment, jealousy, bitterness, impatience. And then fear can be tension, anxiety, nervousness, worry, doubt, jealousy. Sorry, not jealousy. Just insecurity, or feeling not good enough, which can kind of lead to jealousy or unworthiness, right? And these thoughts poison the body, really. So it's really about uh, coming in and checking your head and seeing how you're speaking to yourself and the things that you're believing about yourself, and trying to dig down into the need of what that is really stemming from, or the lack of the need that's not being met. And that's and I wrote my first course, which is based on this delve, where you deep dive into your needs and wants and desires, what you thought or had expectations for your life. This is a big one too. People have huge expectations they put on themselves for their lives, or what they're supposed to achieve by certain age, or what they're supposed to achieve by whatever they put on themselves. And if they don't meet that goal, then but they still hang on to it, they actually can go into this cycle, this cycle where they go down, they spiral down into sort of a self-sabotage, because they're not able to reflect enough to realize that the need that they thought they were going after, they can meet in a different way, or this is not the way in which the need is going to be met, and they're wasting their lives chasing that what they think is going to satisfy the need, and come up empty handed. And when you put that your whole life into that, and you come to the end of that, it's a very depressing place to be, and suicidal perhaps, and that sort of thing. So you need to be able to go within yourself and get really real and raw with the underpinning of, like, just keep asking the question that children always ask: why, another why, no, but why that now, why that, and plumb the depths until you kind of get to that core. Once that core is identified, then you can physically shake it off your body. You can do a ritual, like of burning something that makes it feel like in your head it's going away, or whatever. I mean, our ancestors would do all sorts of ritual. We kind of lost ritual, and I think in part the ritual was there to help us grieve and have closure. Then we don't, and then we stop doing the rituals, or the rituals get bastardized and turned into actual traumas, and we don't have proper closing rituals anymore as well, really. So I think that there's something to be said about that. What do you think, Lorenzo?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something to remember, or I'm even remembering now, is you're always the student. I came into the show, my head tells me before I get on, oh, I'm going to teach people about metaphysical healing. I'm going to share my huge, beautiful story about how and then as we're going through this, I'm feeling my traumas coming up and my stress is coming up, and I'm listening to Amanda give me information I've heard before, but maybe I needed to hear again, right? And some of the things she just shared, I'm going, oh, right. Oh, right, I'm still blaming and I'm still finding stress here. And, so you never know what I'm getting at, where this good information is going to come from. You get what you teach. I've done hundreds of videos. I'm sure Amanda's done even more than that. And I'm finding for myself, the one learning the most is me from giving this, from sharing what I'm sharing. So, what Amanda said makes perfect sense in that, maybe you think it's money you need, but really you're trying to heal a wound in your heart, right? Maybe you think it's a relationship you need with a man or a woman or whatever, and maybe again you're trying to find acceptance in yourself, right? You don't need it from the outside. Maybe it's not the big house you need. Maybe it's a small house in a different area with better neighbors or sweeter fruit that it's available to you. It really doesn't matter. I mean, it comes down to if you understand yourself and the core reasons you're feeling stress, right? It's not about money, and it's not about relationship, and it's not about weather, and it's not about your job, but it's more about how you support yourself, how you love yourself, how you love the people in your life, how you want to be loved. And if you don't like it, it comes back to that blame thing. That's, in my opinion, the worst thing possible, because right away you're saying you don't have the power to change something. You're blaming a government, you're blaming the food available, you're blaming the weather, you're blaming the interference from so-called weather patterns or whatever. It doesn't really matter. You're even blaming yourself. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I can't do this, or I'm just a weak person, so I have to drink, or I don't have enough money, so I have to eat poor. I have to eat poorly, or whatever, or I've been in the winter too long, so now I'm all stressed, and so that I have to smoke that cannabis, if that's what you can do in Canada, I've heard, whatever. And so the blame right away takes the power out of your hands and puts it somewhere external that you have no control over, where you don't have control over anybody. You don't have control over the government. You don't have control over your children if you have them. You don't have control over your partners, your siblings, or your parents, because you simply don't, right? Everyone has to control themselves. And you can maybe force it for a little while, listen to me and do this the way I say it, or I need a raise, or as Amanda said, you can have short-term stresses. Okay, I'll stop smoking for the next weeks, and then it hits you again as soon as you get stressed 3 weeks later, because you haven't hit the core reason of whatever it is that's bothering you. And that comes back down to understanding yourself. Do you just want to be loved? Do I just want to be a strong man? I talked to my father, and I blamed him for not being a strong father for a long time, until I realized just recently, many years into my life, I go, wait a minute. If I'm not being a strong enough man, or I'm not being a strong enough leader, or I'm not being, who I feel like I should be, that's on me 100%. It has nothing to do with my father or how I was raised, or an overbearing mother. Fill in your own blanks. I mean, even people hate when I say this, that have had horrible things happen to them when they were children, and we all have had, in one way or another, poor experiences in our childhood. Everyone I've met, anyways, to this point in my life. And I'm not saying it's good, and I'm not saying they should continue, and I'm not saying, people shouldn't stop all the bad things they're doing, whatever that happens to be. But what I am saying is, when you're 30 or 40 or 50, the responsibility for changing that is 100% in your hands. If you're saying, but, my grandfather did this to me, or, school teacher did that to me, or the nuns hit me too hard on my knuckles, again, doesn't really matter. You had that experience. We don't have to get into the medical, physical reasons of why maybe you chose to come here, and you chose your parents, and you chose that. That's, you can argue that till the cows come home. But what you can't argue is, you're sitting here in your room by yourself, or even if you're with a few people, and the change and getting rid of the stress is 100% in your lap, in your hands, in your responsibility. And by understanding that about yourself, then you can start taking the next steps to change. I mean, maybe you feel the pain, and the vodka martini is not what you need. It's forgiving, even if it's hard, the person that started giving you the pain. Maybe you don't need that extra chocolate bar. It's understanding what your body really needs when you're low in energy, because it's not a sugar hit. Perhaps it's you're being physically poisoned from some of the bad foods you ate in your past, or the bad job. It doesn't really matter. But when you understand it, it doesn't make it easier to change your habits, but it does make it easier in some ways to see the reasons you need to change them. And so in the end, that does make it easier to make the choices. At least that's what I found.
Yeah, thank you for that. There are a few things that came up. One is that it we mess this up because of interfering and shutting down natural processes. And I think a lot of the shame and the blame comes from when you want, maybe you're a boy and you want to cry, maybe you're a teen boy and you want to cry. That's your instinct. But the other people around you frown at that, or you feel a judgment based on how you want to express whatever happened. Maybe you're shaking in fear, which is how we should allow the body to complete a stress response by shaking it off and being okay with the shiver of that fear, and not saying to the child, oh, don't be afraid, stop shivering, stop tremoring, it's okay because you're safe. Well, no, we're actually meddling. They aren't safe right now. They don't feel safe right now. And you're now helping them to feel a sense of safety. Not maybe telling them is helpful, but not necessarily, because it's an energy thing. But then they're going to shake off the rest of the experience without you stopping them from doing it. So I think a lot of it is because we meddle in the natural processes and we don't understand the way of expressing grief or any sort of situation that's come that traumatizes us, which could even be minor. It could even be you're watching a movie or something and it's traumatizing you, which I think a lot of them are actually set up to do just that. And then the other thing comes down to adulthood, being your own adult and your own advocate, and changing that inner voice that starts to berate you if you don't do something correctly. You made a mistake and now you get the judge, your own inner judge, and you keep doing that to yourself. And so adopting a status of self-love above all else, meaning that if you begin to self-sabotage in your life, start to notice when you're doing it, and rather than punishing yourself or berating yourself, which I also feel comes through the school system, sit, be quiet, don't do it, or you'll get in trouble, you'll lose things, like this sort of corporeal based punishment system that we've grown up through, right? Don't say anything or you'll get in trouble, just shut up and don't get involved in this sort of behavior is part of this, because now you're not, someone in the comments said freedom, about freedom, right? Freedom is one of, lack of freedom is an origin of stress. Lack of freedom is certainly an origin of stress, and many of us have gone through that in the last 3 years. In fact, I think one of the top stressors we're probably all still dealing with on some level is the mind control agenda trauma of the past 3 years, and how they have made us feel like our ground is not steady and we don't know what's coming next, and we're always on alert for what is the next scary thing that's coming, what are they going to do to us next. And even in the awake communities it's happening, because they keep doing one psyop after another, and we feel like we have to be on top of all their psyops and all the things they're planning for us and get ahead of it and get it, and it's still keeping us in survival mode. Got to buy big bags of rice, got to buy big bags of flour, and prep, but it's still keeping us in the fear energy. And rather, I would say, just switch it over into a lifestyle. The perception is I'm changing my lifestyle to be more sustainable for my family and feel like I have the ability for my options before me, rather than, oh, I better do it because the bad guys are coming, kind of thing, right? So there's all of that to consider as well. But I know that I'm still seeking to complete that stressor, and I haven't been able to find all the pieces of the type of stress that I've gone through, because I also went through a move and changes to the business. There's all kinds of people that say really mean things to me all the time for some reason. They don't like my style, or if I have a day I like to swear, then I get all kinds of things coming at me. And I can see why a lot of people in the public eye would just forget it, would just say, I'm done with this, because as much as you're trying to help people, there's abuse that comes in the public sphere, because there are so many abused people that they look for all types of opportunity to dump their own energy that they are not taking self-responsibility for, like an adult, onto other people and situations. And I think social media is like a festering ground for it, where you just get to go in anonymously and project and dump all your crap onto other people and go off and feel good for a while, and while the other person takes on the transference, right? And, and so the trauma is really, it's everywhere, it's all pervasive, and we better get on top of how to literally shake it off and get ourselves better at stress management from whatever perception and perspective that's going to do it for us in our family lives as possible. And if that means you have to cut family members out of your life or situations, you have to put your foot down and make a really strong boundary, then that's what you do, because it's self-love first. You have to save yourself first before you can really offer anything of your purpose out into the world that other people will benefit from. And we all know this. This is, I think, really fundamental to getting right with yourself, because ultimately, if you're put yourself in victim mode all the time, then you will keep finding excuses in your life that will say, oh, I see why it didn't work out because this happened. You see why I couldn't follow through on my word and my integrity here? See, because this thing happened. See, this thing always happens to me. This is how it is. This is my life, and life sucks. And then you get into this defeatist, who cares thing. And that's where I see a lot of addictions coming in as well. Who cares? Smoke them if you got them. Eat the ice cream if you got it. Life is short. We might be dead in whatever time. Right? Because at that, I actually met, I'm, being in the profession that I'm in, I will come across people who are on death's door. And I remember a case of a gentleman who had fought hard against his disease state and lost or was losing for all sorts of emotional reasons as well. And I remember when he gave up and he came to show up to last time I saw him alive, and he was already 1 foot not there. And he went to the grocery store and just bought a big bin of chocolate ice cream, had a spoon, and he was literally just eating it like that as he was talking to me. And he was done. He, you know what I mean? Like, that was the complete surrender. I'm going to just give myself and do it. And sometimes maybe that is therapy for people, but I think the purpose is because it's supposed to alter you to get you self-reflective, because you're stuck and you can't see. It's not meant to be just something you do as a rote habit. It's supposed to be purposeful for you to see something in yourself so you can get out of it. So I can see how addictions can be temporarily life-saving even, but the long-term result has to come full circle back to self-love, where you wouldn't punish yourself like that. And you wouldn't get stuck and stay stuck. You would refuse to stay stuck if you were in that victimhood, self-flagellating situation.
Yeah, it's a matter of being honest with yourself, if you like, and then even getting beyond that. I mean, if you're happy, nothing else should bother you. It doesn't really matter. Eat some ice cream, whatever. Have a chocolate bar if you like. Who cares? It's the people that come on, let's say, to chat with me or chat with Amanda. Like, why are you here if you're angry? Why are you yelling at someone like Amanda or myself if things are great? I mean, if your life is perfect and you're happy and you don't like the advice, let's say, that gets shared, or even the reflective experiences that we share, why are you here? I often wonder, like, perhaps they're a troll, perhaps they're not real, perhaps there's someone being paid to bother you. It's possible. I've seen all of those things as maybes, but I'm looking at it from the other end. If someone is here and getting angry with something, when I get angry, I'm going, why am I angry with that? Why is that person pissing me off? Like, why do I want to do this? I mean, you ask yourself, as Amanda said, pretend you're young again. Why? Go to the whys until you're insane with whys, and then you get to the bottom answer of why you're doing something or why you're not. And if you come to a but, and it doesn't matter how big this but is, you got to go around the but. It's like, but this person's always bothering me, but my wife is always hounding me, but my daughter doesn't respect me enough. And Amanda said it, and I'll say it, and a lot of people hate that. Sometimes you have to leave a relationship behind. You have to leave a job behind. I remember for a long time having a friend that I would always argue with. I go, but he doesn't understand me, and he doesn't see the good I'm doing, and he's not sure about, this, and he doesn't see that. And every time I build myself up, he tears me down, all this craziness going on in my head. I'm going like, wait a minute, I don't have to see this person. I don't have to call this person. I don't have to visit. It doesn't matter if someone's been your friend for 20 years, 30 years, or you've known them your whole life. If you're related, by blood, you don't have to see that person. You can move. And the but that comes next, but I don't have enough money, but we've been married for 40 years, but we have 3 children, but I can't leave my job. That's your challenge, right? That's the but that's going to get you over the challenge. Because if you sit down and look at whatever's stopping you, like, I can't leave for these 3 reasons. I can't quit my job for these 3 reasons. I can't stop eating ice cream for these 6 reasons. Those right there are the clues to the origins of whatever's stressing you. And if you delve deep into those origins, and what really hit me the strongest in this conversation is once you heal something, you go, why the hell did I wait so long to do that? Right? Like if you leave a relationship or you leave a job, always something better is waiting. It's also a trust in your own personal power and your own personal evolution. Like, why are you here? Were you born into this life to have a stressful, stupid, unhealthy existence? Like, is like, if you believe in God or spirit or Buddha or the great cucumber in the sky, it doesn't matter. But you got to imagine, as I've imagined, you're here probably to have a good life. You're probably here to not enjoy yourself, like Amanda says, like, who cares, have some ice cream, but I mean to enjoy the existence of your heart, of your love, of your creativity, of more. And if that's not why you're in your current circumstances, probably it would be good to imagine that you have a better possibility, maybe a better destiny, maybe a better, coming existence, and to figure that out for yourself. And if if you're a wife or your husband or your children or your best buddy or your country or your job or your monetary wallet or your digital coins or your gold bars or whatever it is people are counting these days can't come with you, good. You don't need them then. Amanda said it really beautifully back at the beginning of this conversation. Some of the reasons that maybe you're chasing these goals aren't valid anymore, right? Maybe they were valid when you were 20 and you wanted to get all the ladies, or when you were, 18 and your parents told you got to save for a rainy day and that's the only way you'll be happy. And you said, okay, mama, okay, daddy. Or when someone told you you're a man, it's like this, or you're a woman, it's like this. Maybe those excuses aren't good enough to excuse why you're not happy any longer. And so it comes down, again, personal responsibility. You can do it. That's one message I'm going to bring to everyone here. And I brought to myself, if you need to change, if you want to change, we always have the resources required, man. And if you haven't accessed them yet, that could be the stress, is you just haven't picked up that next bit of power, that next change, that next movement that, something in you is crying for. And maybe, the ulcer, or the upset stomach, or the foggy head, or the lack of sleep, those are just indications that something's nudging you, going, come on, poke, 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 move. Like, if it was easy, you wouldn't move. Humans are lazy by nature. I'll talk about myself. So if we don't get stressed, if we don't have something saying this isn't comfortable, it's too cold, it's too hot, it's too, again, fill in your own butts, then we probably would never move, right? If you have 6 pillows and 7 margaritas, and someone's paying all the bills, and someone's got a steak waiting for you for dinner, and tomorrow morning someone's making you a beautiful cake for breakfast, and that's all going to be fine in your body, we'd probably sit back and go, this is great, it's heaven. But as soon as something bad is happening or stressful is happening, it's just an indicator of change, or a required change.
Yeah. And also, you really have to become your own advocate. As much as, I know all the victim aspects, and one of them is that no one's there for me. No one will catch my phone. No one will be there if I need somebody. And that type of coping mechanism, I find, has been predominant in my life because I've always been so high achieving and in putting myself in leadership positions. So what ended up happening, by me wanting things and feeling goal driven, and not being a procrastinator, was that the reward system that comes from when you do things started to entrain me in a way where people thought I was always okay because I'm strong and because I'm capable and because I have abilities to do things rapidly or in an efficient way. And I could get good grades or I could do those things. It was weird because I would see people who were putting themselves in lower positions having more attention put on them. And I wondered, I could see how if I was a different brain, you know, and I was achieving in that way and I was getting lonelier, which I didn't want, and I was being made assumptions were put on me that I don't need anything because I'm able, because I'm capable, therefore I have no needs. And me also then trying to live up to the other person's expectation of me because this is a loving thing we do in friendships, at least subconsciously or otherwise, right? We try to live up to the expectation that our friends and family put on us because we think that's a loving thing to do. But this path can then lead us to getting lost in all kinds of ways where we then never learn to speak up for what our needs were in the first place, or even question the fact that we were having needs unmet and therefore having danger of those being subconsciously held. And what happens when that is in that state? Well, we start to cause ripple effects in our reality that are going to feed back on that to try to get that need met. And we may not see the chaos aspect of letting it go like that. And I know when I started to see that I was falling in a trap where I felt really alone and that no one understood my path and that I had no, basically the self-punishment and the shame was that I have no right to complain. I have it good. I know how to make money. I know how to run households. I know how to do certain things, right? So I'm very fortunate and I'm steeped in gratitude, but you could still be steeped in gratitude and still have unmet needs, right? And so I was that's like a new age sidestepping spiritual bypassing trick where you're not really addressing that. Maybe it's an inner child need you never even knew you had. Maybe you've even done all kinds of inner work like I have for inner child and still not found that particular one. And it's starting to pop up in your reality. Well, the only way that I could find a solution for it was to advocate for myself, meaning that I became the inner parent voice that when stuff started to happen and I saw that my need wasn't getting met and I was feeling an emotion like bitterness or resentment or anger or whatever, then instead of the habit of trying to correct the other person's behavior or however that came up, I would still go back into myself and say, okay, what aspect of this is me and what is the need it's connected to the point where it might actually clear up in your reality without you even having to approach the reflector person who's mirroring stuff for you to figure out for yourself. If you just take the work and run with it, whatever the trigger was or whatever the sensation was, you'll get to the part inside yourself that is hidden in a corner in the shadow and you can't see it. And that's the work and why we keep pinging off each other so much, why we keep agitating each other so much. It's actually service work. We're trying to serve each other, but it's just too subconscious ping pong match, and nobody's really in control of the game, right? So that's going to make a lot of mess. That's going to make a lot of chaos and confusion and accidents and whatever. So I see that from, and again, you're right. As you said at the beginning, Lorenzo, same thing. I can only speak from my path and my experiences and stuff that's been in my reality. Of course, I don't know everybody's experience and how they dealt with trauma or how they have boundaries or all those things. We assume because we can see similarities in mankind and we have grouped a lot of those together. But as I said, we could still have made an incorrect assumption on that. So it's really your path to explore. But if you can at least get into self-advocacy, then at least you're not the one doing yourself in, because that's the worst position to be in. And that can be from training from a narcissistic experience, like with a family, right? Where you become you're the scapegoat and you get the negative imprinting. So the voice in your head is always very self flagellating and berating, right? You have to reframe this, and that's the inner child work that will do that. And then shake off the old traumas, and then try to get to the source of the ones you just can't put your finger on, and see what route it is for you to purge it. And it really is a higher level cleansing system. It's like we have to cleanse on every layer of ourselves in order to reach our peak optimized uh, aspect of ourselves that we're here to actually exist in our joy, as you said and alluded to, is we're supposed to have a good and happy life. And I feel that's how we get there.
Yeah, I mean, I see some of the comments coming through on, stop with the LEDs and the 5Gs and the Wi-Fi's and the smogs and this and it's true. I mean, obviously, if you're sticking a fork in your eye and you want to get better, you should stop sticking a fork in your eye. I mean, that's just a bottom intelligence. But I find, and I've fallen into this trap over the years, it's pretty much kindergarten stuff. Stop poisoning yourself. Step one. Right? If you're poisoned and you need to detox, you can't keep poisoning yourself and detoxing and poisoning yourself and detoxing. I mean, I fell into that trap. I would, fast or this or eat well and then binge drink, 20 years ago or do this, that, and the other thing, and then go whatever, eat too much sugar. And of course, it's not really helping, right? You're just on a cycle of feeling a little bit better for helping yourself and then hurting yourself some more and feeling a little bit better. And eventually you're just going to get old and die. So for sure, stop poisoning yourself. And, as Amanda and I talked about when we came on in the beginning, you're made up of, 80% water. So water, if you make a sound on it, you'll see the reflection in it. So maybe that's why you have to stop hanging out, Amanda said, with people that are expressing a habit you don't want to anymore. If everyone's drinking, you want to stop drinking. Obviously, you shouldn't be going out to bars. If you want to stop being angry, you shouldn't be hanging out with angry people. I mean, maybe the time for that mirror, again, as Amanda said, that ping pong effect is over. It takes two to ping pong. So if you've decided you don't want to ping pong anymore, put your paddle away and leave the room, right? And so maybe you have to be the bigger person in that case. And all you're going to do, and the reason for that is it's their fault, it's your fault, your parents, again, it's saving yourself, right? Saving yourself from the stress, saving yourself from the stresses of the poisoning, saving yourself from the stresses of a relationship. And again, if you're calm, I don't know about anybody else here watching, or Amanda, if I go for a walk and I sit with a tree, if I go for a walk and I listen to some birds, if I go for a walk and, even just I'm on a park bench and I'm watching old people play their whatever it is, their lawn golf or whatever they do here where, I'm in Asia. For me, it's just I'm peacefully relaxing my body, and then other ideas are coming up, right? Other inspirations are hitting me. It's like, oh, right, I was wrong yesterday. I mean, I have a painting up here from a manga artist that's not with us anymore. It's basically a little boy looking in a mirror, sticking a tongue out at himself, and it's going, how am I stupid today? My wife bought this for me many years ago, right? So I look at it in the mornings, I'm going, it's more like, how am I wrong? How am I not doing the best I can do? How am I being stupid with myself? And I'm not talking about anyone else. And I guarantee you, as best I can, that I guarantee myself every day that I'm alive, there's something more for me to learn. There's something more for me to understand about myself. And there's a better way for me to be alive. I mean, that's why we're here. It probably could go on infinitely. This life, the next life, all your lives. So, if you look at even the possibilities of ancient history I've studied, or you go back to the past, you can see there's nothing but better ways to be alive than our politicians expressed, than our energy systems expressed, and our food systems expressed, even relationships, schools. It's all BS, garbage, and meant to stress our entertainment to contain you, right? It's all there in the language too. We didn't even get into, studying to be schooled, to be tasked with things is to be, to be stressed, your taxes to tax you, to pain you, etc., etc. I mean, that's all obvious, but what you do with that then, make a better system by making yourself better first, and who knows who's going to come along. Again, it might not be the people in your life at the moment. You might have a different job. You might have a different way of savings. You might have a different way of eating. But as long as you're happy and your heart is happy, we're getting back to the medical, physical origins of stress, is to find out what your heart, and I don't mean your head, find out what your heart is really asking for. If it's love, what does that mean to you? right? If it's success, what does that mean to you? Not what someone else, and then take it deeper, and then take it deeper, and then take it deeper. And you'll probably find out you already have everything you need. You just have to make a little step to the left, right? You just have to close one door. You just have to put down the beer bottle. You just have to stop arguing with your brother or your sister, because who cares if they're right or wrong? It doesn't make a difference anymore. And then you can take yourself to the next level of whatever it is you're asking for yourself. And I found that is where your healing is going to come from.
Yeah, and then the other aspect too with ritual, when I was alluding to ritual, is actually being satisfied with yourself and taking a moment to celebrate life and celebrate yourself. And I feel and maybe you being in Japan see this with the work ethic, which I feel from a German background, I have this really strict work ethic that's come through, and it keeps me where I'm trying to remain humble. As a virtue, I think humbleness is one of the top virtues, at least from my perspective and what I value, right? And my idea of humbleness always was, well, you don't celebrate yourself and your wins and your achievements because it's uh, it's ego, or it's not your job to do that. It's other people's job to notice if you do it, and then they can celebrate you if it's appropriate. This sort of thinking. I always shied away from parties and celebrations in all the major, when we do have major exams, we'd pass our exams and everyone would go party. I would go, but my mind was not on, oh, yay, me, look what I did. I was always on to the immediate next thing of what my next achievement, what I wanted to do next. And I never learned how to stop and pause and really soak that in for my life. I just never learned to do that. And now that I'm 48, I am trying to slow down the way that I think I'm achieving, or what that even means, and what is the goal. Is there really like work hard and sacrifice and then party at the end? So basically like punch yourself in the head and then go soothe yourself afterwards, from hurting yourself for trying to achieve too hard? Is that what that ritual is? Because I don't know if that's the right way to go about it. Or is it trying to enjoy the process throughout your experience of the work that you're calling difficult or hard, or the thing that you think you're challenging yourself through, but also enjoying it as you go along and bringing more presence into it? And therefore, at the end, you could have a really clarifying moment of gratitude for the experience and then close off the experience. But you don't need to go to a big party and have a keg and that sort of thing to really do it. It doesn't have to be so over the top, because you've already been celebrating your achievement all the way through as you've been going, with joy and peace inside of you, which I think is the biggest achievement you can do when you're thinking you're setting a goal and heading for the goal. And also might help your trajectory go even more natural and more in alignment with who you are, and then creating further successes where you still continue that fulfillment. Because that's the other thing, where you can get a good run of luck on your experiences and then turn a corner on hardship. Then what do you do when you haven't experienced that level of hardship, or have the skill set in order to navigate that, rather than going into, well, there won't be celebrations on this one. Will there? So are you still going to even pull through the difficulties with joy in your heart, and with an ability to see that there's some good shift that will come out of all of this, no matter what? Is that a perspective you'll have? Or does it go all the way into the poor me, I'm a victim now, look, it was going so well, I must have done something wrong to deserve this, I must have angered God, I must have made karma, whatever the belief system is, then trips you up. But that's, as I talk about the spiral a lot, this is how we go up the spiral. It's a spiral on an angle. Seems like you're heading backwards before you get to the next level. And it can feel like a failure, but it's really just a test. And if you see life like that as a series of events that you have choice over the way you respond to or react, inside of, I think that you can avoid a lot of the traumatizing experiences happening in the first place, so that after you don't have to go and close the session and heal the trauma over and over again, or make ripple effects of trauma in your own family's lives.
Yeah, and I see some comments on government and rules and things like that. I mean, seeing how you're going to fix something, maybe it'll be a surprise on how you get there. But the reason I've been sharing all of this is it's not a philosophical system, or it's not a belief system. It's practical. Right? We make our reality. I make my own reality. If I'm feeling good and I'm smiling, people are going to feel good and smile back at me. If I'm walking around grumbling, people are going to grumble back at me. I've seen that over and over and over. I mean, I remember a story when all these viral shenanigans happened of a fellow that was separated from his 12-year-old son. His son was in South America. I don't remember what happened with his mother, or she ran away and stole. It was what the, and he supposedly couldn't travel from the United States. And it was in South America over Mexico because of the border rules and this rules and the medical intervention rules and all this other bullshit. And he just said, it doesn't matter. I want to see my son. Right. And 100 people told him he couldn't see his son. Right. So he got in the car, he got into Mexico. That's all right. He traveled around. And, to make a long story short, when he got to the other border going into South America and you supposedly needed your, medical certificate to get over, he shared his story. He was stopped at the side of a road by an army fellow for whatever reason. Maybe his plates were from the States and he was in Mexico. I'm not sure the bottom reason, but when he shared his story with his fellow, this army guy snuck him over the border to see his son, because he said, I understand how you're feeling. This is, something, my heart is feeling your heart. And let me show you a way to get over so you can go do what you need to do and get on with your life. Right. And he met his son. They came back. I don't know if they lived happily ever after or not. I didn't follow the story after that. But for me, that was enough of the story to see that doesn't matter what someone tells you, doesn't matter what the government tells you, doesn't matter what the rules are, doesn't matter what certificates you need, doesn't matter any of this. Like, it's all outside stuff that's a trick, in my opinion, that is stopping you from following your heart and going to wherever it is you need to go. If the government says you can't do something, F them, really. If your friends say you can't do something, it's that this is part of the dross you toss. Right? Oh, it's even rhymes. So you toss all of that. You toss what the government they tell you can't do this. You can't. I mean, I don't know how many rules I've been told I can't follow, and I've never listened to any of them. And here I am. They changed rules in junior high school because I missed 60% of my time and I still got A's, because it's all nonsense BS they teach you. You can memorize it, regurgitate it back to them, and get your grades. You're not really teaching you anything. I was lucky I had a mother that said, you want to stay home, you're getting good grades, I don't care. But then they changed the rules because, wait a minute, it's not about the grades. It's about, you being locked in this class of attendance so that you learn, later. So I learned what schooling really was at the time. It wasn't about understanding. It was about, modifying your behavior. Right. And, so that changed me as how I've grown up and seen other things, and hearing the story about this fellow. And this is one of 100 stories of people that haven't listened to what they were told they cannot do, and they did it anyways. And the answers can't be immediate. Like, you're not there yet, right? You're going into your unknown. That's something a lot of people have stress with. The unknown stresses them. So, another part of this metaphysical healing where I feel you have to understand yourself is you have to gain the power and the strength and the bravery enough to understand you're ready to face whatever comes. I mean, that's a lot of the things that bring people stress, why they want money, maybe why they want a relationship. I can't face being lonely. I can't face, without having savings. I can't face without, knowing I'm going to have my food in the refrigerator for the next week. I can't face without having my, 6-pack of cigarettes or my beer beside me because, some stress is going to come and I won't be able to deal with it. So when you make yourself into the type of being where you're ready for any challenge, then you're ready to go into your unknown. Then you're ready to face whatever's stressing you. And then you're ready to take responsibility because even if it hurts, even if you fall down, even if someone bloodies your nose, today I'm okay. I wanted to make some t-shirts. Like, we're all alive. We're all here that are listening to this. You've had your 20 years, your 50 years, your 60 years, and probably you're pretty much okay, even if you have some physical ailments. So far in your life, you've made it. right? You're here, you're alive. Even if you have whatever challenges you have, you're doing all right enough to have an internet connection. You're doing all right to be sitting in front of your computer listening to us, right? You're doing all right to have no one's chasing you with a machine gun. Probably you haven't stopped to listen to us if someone's after you with a knife, or there's monsters with big teeth trying to eat your feet or whatever in the background. So somehow you've had a good enough life to be where you are, to where you can sit down and enjoy this chat that we're having and pick up that information. So probably you can take yourself to the next steps, whatever they are for you. And there's nothing but, even though no one can help you, there's nothing but advice, there's nothing but help, there's nothing but free videos. I've listened to hundreds of Amanda's videos. I have 100 videos. There's probably 100 other people that have 100 good videos with good advice. So there's really no excuse if you want to get to where you're going and heal yourself, become metaphysically whole, healthy, and empowered, if you like, unless the blame is looking at you. If you pick up your cell phone or you go into the mirror the next time you brush your teeth, and that is where blame begins at home. I would say, because that's where change starts as well.
Yeah, that's well said, Lorenzo. 100% agree. And we're really having to do this work now, and it's really it's mandatory. I don't think we get around it. I don't think we get a free ride here. And when that work is done, though, there is a new type of ease that can come into your life, and a new type of effervescent energy that just feeds you rather than drains you. And it's the effort you're putting in creates a different type of momentum in your life. And then you can utilize that momentum to get yourself out of being really still stuck, or wherever you find that your life is stuck. And if I identify stuck energy in my reality, which I've had to face a lot recently, and ask, is this because it's not supposed to move forward because everything's in perfect timing and I don't want to meddle, and so I have to just be patient and wait? So is it a fact that I'm just being impatient, or is this that I know that there's a stuck energy and I need to actually look at it a few ways and decide how to work around and move and mobilize the energy and detox what's happening, so that I can get progress in my life and things moving forward? Because everything is change in this place. It's constant change, and it's really about flowing. If you're flowing change, it's not shocking. If you're stochastically jumping from one traumatic change to another, it can be jarring to you, can be shocking to you, and it can result in that trauma response. And that's where I'm trying to always look in my world to see, is there energy stopped, or is it flowing? And where it stopped, why? And is it stopped because it's protecting me, or is it stopped because I'm supposed to find a workable solution around this? And constantly challenging yourself in this way will give you a habit of doing that to your life, in your life, so that you don't get buried. It's like putting your room away. You're going to get buried in laundry pretty quick if and garbage and dust if you don't take care of the space. It's the same thing as taking care of the space in your body and in your mind, to declutter it and then prevent future clutter from happening, and create new systems of organizing for the way that you can stay on top of your needs, wants, desires, and those things. And it might be in that lifetime that there's not a really outward physical achievement. That might not be what you were here to achieve. It might be an emotional achievement that you were here to achieve. And we're so material that we're being told we have to behave and achieve in a certain way. And there are many monks sitting in caves, or sitting on the Ganges River in India, that are not achieving the way we think we're supposed to be achieving, which is earning money and being a citizen and participating in a community and these sorts of things that are expected of us. They are that particular lifetime, they've decided on what the challenge is, and it is the state of non-doing, right? That can be also a legitimate life path. and it has nothing to do with producing and having a creative output per se. Not my path. My path is a creative output path, is constantly making, inventing, and creating. I have a motor for work. I am built to do work. I'm built to do heavy work as well. And that's what gives me joy. If I'm actually out, even if I'm just raking and I'm sweating in the sun, I like that feeling in my body. Maybe not as I'm sweating and the bugs are biting me or something, but afterward, especially when I go and I have a rinse off, there's a sensation in my body that I have achieved something very good for myself. And I trust that sensation over and over again. And the more that you give yourself healthy feedback sensations, then the ones that are the saboteur sensations that keep you pulled into habits and addictions, they'll change. And yes, you can get addicted to working out and raking the leaves and all that. You have to still pay attention to your pattern switching and excuse making for still actually doing um, addictive behaviors. But I've seen better outcomes, at least for people who can funnel their energy in a more constructive way, and they can still get out of the addiction cycle after the fact. So yeah, very, very interesting to and important to touch on this topic, especially as I see a lot of arguing between parties and kind of a divorce between alignments and things online a lot of the time, and divisions and beliefs and ideas and that sort of thing. And one of the things I was teaching, I was just with Beth Martin's group and teaching them about how to have critical thinking skills, and that whole aspect of how to sort out a problem, and using the Socratic method, which I think I'm going to dive into more and maybe even do a presentation on, specifically how to bring the Socratic method into your life as a tool to keep asking questions for clarity to get to deep truths. And you can do it in obviously the official scholastic setting where you prepare, and it's you have a mediator who's helping you have those questions answered, or who's fielding the open-ended questions. But even for us, it is asking yourself an open-ended question and trying to come up with the answer of why you're doing or acting a certain way, or why you have a specific desire or goal, or what's driving you. These sorts of things. And it's very helpful to get your brain working for you, switch off like your limbic system and the parts of your brain that are in fight or flight mode or survival mode, and really trigger just even through deep breathing. If people just learn how to deep breathe when they feel like they want to react into something, like stop and actually do a really full breath and get your frontal lobe switched on, you can think through the problem without reacting to it emotionally most of the time. If you just took a sec. That's a pretty simple fix that you can actually employ when you're tested and you feel like you're going to be upset at something, that you can get out of that stress response, icky feeling in your body, which is probably what you're reacting to and why you want to just transfer it onto somebody else in the first place. Get control of that mechanism, turn on your thinking brain, and actually come at it with an adult approach, rather than putting clown faces and joking at people and whatever, which loses context in the written word, and or whatever, just judging somebody for how they're trying to communicate, rather than realize the limitations of the way that we are taught to communicate with. Also, in this state of English, as far as that's concerned, that is very limiting as well to how we communicate. So we don't have all cylinders firing as we're trying to make these severe corrections, so that the ultimate goal is so we can really have proper community and really have proper communication and really be able to get along, and not have a government totalitarian network trying to govern and control us because we're ungovernable with ourselves. We don't want it, but where does it start? It starts with our own governance inside of ourselves. And that's the reflection on the outer, Big Daddy coming to tell you you're a child who has to behave right and behave the way they want, even though they're absolute 100% narcissists. Don't we want out to break out of that cycle? I think we do. And in order for us to do it from a metaphysical perspective, we need to get a hold of what's happening inside of ourselves and the way that we are taking charge of our lives. And that will have ripple effect everywhere else. And we'll also model it for our children and other people and really do true service to this place.
Yeah, I mean, if they're giving you rules you don't like, don't listen to them. You don't have to fight anybody. I remember sitting around a little while ago and, my wife reads the Japanese news and saying, oh, all the prices are going up here. The prices are going up there. They're doubling this because, they got to give all the money to some near Russian country over there. I don't even want to get into any of that garbage as to why they're supposedly squeezing everybody, which is all BS. And I said, wow, that not me. My prices aren't going up. I don't see that as my reality. I don't see that as something I should worry about. And it's not up to them what I pay for my food. It's not up to them what and and then I'm walking around the neighborhood and I come across this little stand near someone that's selling ice cream and sweet potatoes. There's a whole bunch of carrots there, in bags, very cheap, half price in the store. And so I picked them up and my wife reads the sign because I don't read Japanese as well as I should. And it says, my father's growing these organically in some small fields over there because he loves growing. And so for half price, more than organic, best, I didn't even believe carrots could be juicy, right? Like to this day, I'm still shocked at how sweet and big these were and half price. And they're not legally organic. They don't have labels on them. They haven't been packaged. They haven't been taxed. They haven't been sold in the stores. But every Monday, and I've been going there for a few months now, because her father loves growing and that's his hobby, and and he does biodynamic growing, and he doesn't even call it that. He goes, well, I just want to make sure everything's okay and the soil's good and the food is nice, and I just love doing this, and it makes my heart feel good. So I've been eating these beyond amazing, beyond organic, beyond what have you, bits of food. And how did I get those? I have no idea, other than I made a choice. I don't care what they say. I made a choice. It's not about these little coupons in my pocket or these digital phone digits or whatever. It's more about me getting the nutrition I need. I'm going to let the world tell me how that shows up, and my heart's going to follow it. And I've followed my heart and found the best I've ever had, the best of the best of the best. And how did I find it? I couldn't tell you because it came from my unknown. But more importantly, as Amanda said there, it came from a choice for me to say, I don't like this government system. I don't like these rules. I don't like being told what to do, especially when it's obviously unfair. So instead of, they're doing their job. I don't, how many people say, oh, the politicians, if they do this, it's better, or this guy's going to save us, or this lady's going to save us, or if they change this rule, we'll be okay, or if they lower our taxes, or, do this for our energy. This is being done on purpose. You really have to be, to grow up, put your big boy pants on, put your big girl dress on, or switch it around if you like, doesn't matter to me. But you realize the government or whoever is doing this on purpose. So you have to purposefully change who you're listening to, why you're listening, and what you're doing, and the outcomes you expect. And, as Amanda said, maybe it's not going to be as easy as walking into your neighborhood Loblaws and picking up your carrots because that's what you want. Maybe you'll have to find someone selling them on the sly down the road who loves farming. Doesn't matter. That's what life's about. It's the adventure. It's the journey. It's the beauty of finding new solutions. And then your power grows because now I know from my experience, I don't have to listen to their rules. It's not a guess anymore. Go, wait a minute. I changed my idea of what's possible for me to feed myself. Maybe you want to grow for yourself. That's great. Maybe you don't. But maybe there's 100 people, because there are beautiful people out there doing beautiful things. There are beautiful men. There are beautiful women. There are beautiful children. There's nothing but really nice people out there that have been stressed and strained and caged into being not so nice. So, you'll find them. They'll find you. Your vibration will attract what you need to do. And from there, you'll be able to make the next choice and the next choice and the next choice. Metaphysically heal yourself. Get beyond the need to be addicted or sick, whatever that is for you. And I think it's an organic thing. A flower grows because it wants to grow. It doesn't really matter the rules. You put it in the ground, it's going to grow. Doesn't care what the government's saying. Doesn't care what you're saying. Some sunshine, some water, some nice winds, and it's growing. And, I think we're the same.
Yeah, well said, Lorenzo. And also, when you learn about these methods of contemplation and introspection and self-governance and being your own witness and dropping the internal judge and owning the inner child and forgiving, asking for integration with the inner child and doing the TRE or the somatic experiencing where you're shaking things off, when you're doing these things actively, or getting at your tuning forks and tuning your body, or getting out in nature, like you mentioned, and grounding your body, when you're starting to make those shifts of release in some way where you're actively helping the body to let go of the things that you're congealing and holding on, you lose that stiffness. And as we get old, we get stiffer and stiffer and tighter and tighter. And it's harder for us to accept change, and we don't process as fast, and these sorts of things, because we have containered or put into containers all of these experiences and lock them inside of our bodies. And when we begin this self-loving approach, we become empowered to the knowledge of what is in here. And when you know that part, maybe you don't know who you exactly are, but you know enough of what you are. You know enough of how you operate. You understand your inner desires that drive you. You've reflected on those. That's the ungovernable person from the outside, because now you've stepped in as governor. They can't government you or brainwash you into thinking you have to hand over your power to them all the time. This is why, and as I have said and will continue to stress, that this is the work of the day. This is if you are not sure where to go next in what's coming, with all of the plans and all of the fears and all of the stuff, this is the place. When you have done this, you will be able to see the need in the moment and be able to work around it, just like the carrots at the market. You will hear which direction you're supposed to go to have your workaround. I know for the past 3 and something years, it's all been workarounds. It's been 100% workaround challenge. And I think the people who complied missed out on some massive training over the last few years, because I know the benefits that I've gained are, I see where there's missed opportunities rather than challenges before me. And when you understand your power, you know that that's not the answer of some evil entity coming and forcing you to do something or putting harm upon you, is only through your acceptance. And when you know that, there's nothing they're going to try to lure you. They're going to try to brainwash you. They're going to throw propaganda at you. They're going to try to incentivize you. They're going to try to make you feel guilty if you don't virtue signal. All of those manipulations now just don't touch you. You cannot be manipulated to give your power back away to those who want it and obviously need it, and obviously need us in order to even exist. And this is the sea change that's required, because it hits all kinds of points, not only to walk away from the totalitarianism, but also to figure out how you're going to work in your own networks, in your own local communities, in your family unit, and where you stand in that as a PowerPoint, because you just went through a whole bunch of training. So you have a skill set now. And that skill set of figuring out workarounds is going to keep happening, because they are going to implode this system at some point. Even when they implode systems, there'll still be structures left over. So I think people think it's going to be a big wipeout, but I don't think it really happens like that, because there's more going on than we can really perceive and see. And if we take it from that this is supposed to serve us into some purpose, if we pour the waters of consciousness on the fact that whatever's happening here is part of something that we want to be a part of or need to be a part of, then we are going to pay attention and have a different perspective the way we see the signs and the information coming to us. And when you get heart-centered, and when you are grounded in yourself, and when you've done that work, and you're not in constant stress, when BS comes at you, you're like, yeah, nah, like this. And when you're stressed and you can't see, and you're putting out fires in your life, and you're in chaos, then when chaos keeps pinging back at you, you're going to just keep reacting, and it's a chain reaction, right? And I really do think it's fundamental for us right now to really get a hold of this. And it's been something that I've been contemplating quite heavily lately.
Yeah, I mean, look at your life. I mean, I've look at the last 100 years. It hasn't been that great. Even when people were making money, even when the 80s there was lots of money going on, or my father was doing well as a higher middle class, people were still slaves. I mean, my father still had a job where he was gone 6 days a week working all the time. And people go, "Oh, the good old days." They really weren't good old days. I look in Japan where the salarymen worked themselves to death in the 70s and 80s. So what do? You get a fast car, you get a mortgage, you get a bigger house, you get a little bit more square footage in a big city, Toronto, Tokyo, Los Angeles, wherever. And really, what are you getting? Like, people I found have forgotten that life wasn't really that good. It was maybe better because they let you have more cookies in a week than before. But think about 500 years ago. Think about 1,000 years ago. Think about the golden age. Think about the times that have probably been hidden. If you do some reading and some studies and you see some alternative history, you can probably figure out humans weren't meant to be doing jobs. Humans weren't meant to be working for these illusionary bucks or gold, whatever. I don't care digital. I don't care gold. I don't care what they call it. Doesn't really matter. Your time was meant to be spent in creative endeavors, making something wonderful for the sake of making something wonderful. Because when I make something beautiful, my heart goes, "Isn't that amazing?" My head goes, "Can we sell it?" Right? And I'm going, "What are you talking about?" Right? Or somebody has a good song, and then my head goes, "Maybe we can sell it, make $1 million." And you're going, like, what's going on here? Right? It's like there's a beautiful song, share it. You have beautiful art, share it. This fellow makes beautiful carrots. He literally sells them. I can't even understand how cheap he sells them, but he can do it because he wants to share it, right? And I tell her, "Tell your father this is the best carrots I've ever had." She goes, "He's so happy to hear that." And that's the end of that, right? He's not going, "Maybe I should charge more money now, or maybe I should formalize my carrot making plantation and rule the world with carrots." It's not the case. The case is he likes being in the soil, doing what he's doing, making something, and you can tell in the taste. And that's not a language thing. It's not a thinking thing. That's a creative, loving aspect, and that is perhaps why we're here. That's perhaps the beginning of those workarounds Amanda just mentioned. I mean, so you work around the government. Good. You don't listen to the system. Good. You don't have a country you like. Good. None of this is even, at the end of your days, I can pretty much guarantee when you're having that last breath and you're going off to the other side and you're dying, you're not going to be saying, "I'm so happy the government changed the rules," or "I'm so happy I have," other things are going to come to you. I've had some almost dead experiences, and you're sorry. I was sorry I was an asshole. You're sorry you weren't loving enough. You're sorry you weren't nice to your mother. You're sorry maybe you didn't follow that stream that said you should paint more or dance more or sing more. You're not sorry that your wallet doesn't have an extra couple of $100. That stuff just goes away like a fart in the wind real fast when you're faced with your death. So you and everybody maybe has had that sort of experience where for one reason or another they can imagine or feel, or they're coming to the end of this particular perspective of existence, which I'll call our personal lives and personality. And in that moment what's important to you and what's not. Right? Your guts, when they release themselves, if you're having trauma, which I've heard happens, or you stop thinking, something else wakes up and goes, maybe this is just a bad dream that we can switch and make a different one. And maybe that's why the government's like, if they wanted to kill you, they could. Put poison in the water, everyone's dead tomorrow, right? They wanted to stop you from making babies, they could. All this stuff. Oh my goodness, genocide. Oh my goodness, population. Oh my goodness, sex change. They push it so much because you have to do it to yourself, right? It's on the TV and the cell phones and the media and ad nauseum because you have to do it to yourself. If you didn't, why couldn't they secretly sneak in and take your babies and change your this and poison? It would be too easy. Really, it would be too easy for the people with all the money and all the power to do all this. They don't. Maybe ask yourself why they haven't done it directly. And I believe it's because they really can't. You have to do it to yourself, and that's the beauty. And we'll take this talk full circle. As you pick up your power, you stop blaming. That's why it's a practical thing that I say don't blame. It's not because it's a moral issue or it's a nice issue or it's a loving issue. It's just practical. If you practically pick up your power, you can practically change anything.
And the only way that would have happened where there was a mass slaughter is that either the chief gave away the jurisdiction or the power, or the whomever was in the agreement. So say there was a contract agreement that someone signed and didn't realize that they had agreed to it, then they're in, and they can be vulnerable. This is why you want to learn about the system that you're in and make your claim of right, and put yourself into landed status and aliveness status, where you're not dead at sea, where they can kind of play with you and have manipulation as if you were a chess piece, and they are merely in ordinance of being able to manipulate you. You take yourself away from that. That's why when you learn who you are and you throw off the trauma and you figure that out, you're able to have the energy and the wherewithal to extricate yourself from these systems that have tricked you into consenting. Then you're really in a position, like you said, where they can't do anything to you. There are laws and rules of this place. And I think a lot of the ancient books and ways were trying to show us how to do that, exactly how to achieve it in this vessel, because it is bringing the ethereal into the physical form. It actually is in and through us, and the physical it matters. Physical matters. And that is how we're transforming. That's one of the goals of our existence. I feel, at least what I sense in my studies, is why would why wouldn't there be a goal to achieve some higher status of awareness? And as we know, when we slip in different states of consciousness, we don't get the full spectrum of our experience. We only get parts of it, or we may not remember things. And we then can feel disconnected. But I feel like we're trying to actually find our uniqueness and at the same time have that precious connection. And that takes effort, work, and chiseling of this form into an optimal state where the Christos, like George W. Carey talks about, rises up the spine and bathes the brain in the oils, and it assists the pineal to work properly. Then we can have other ways of knowing and seeing this reality, getting other perspectives that can assist us in this process of having our most aware experience. And perhaps that's the end of the goal. When you've achieved that, you move on, or that's all guesswork. But I do feel inside of myself, again, speaking for myself, that that feels to be a goal to me. And in order to achieve that, that means the state of being has to be purified in order to vibrate where you want to vibrate. And people will go there in all different directions. I don't think there's one correct path. Probably why there's so many different spiritual lineages out there that also all can get you to your goal.
Probably, there's as many paths as there are people. You are the path. Someone in there is where is the contract or tacit agreement for chemtrails? It's not about that, right? It's really not about whether there's a tacit agreement or a contract. My story about that is when I used to walk around saying, "Oh my goodness, chemtrails! Oh my goodness, you're taking my son! Oh my goodness, you're stealing my day!" Getting angry. That was my experience. But more recently, when I'm walking around feeling very good, the skies part for me. I'll take a long walk, and at the end, even though it's a cloudy day, the sun is, because I go in my reality, my dream, it's a sunny day. In my reality, I have chemtrails. They poison the water. It stinks here of chlorine. It's harder to get organic stuff, in Japan than it is supposedly labeled organic stuff. But with the farmers I find, or the local stuff, or the wind that changes, my dream is just not as affected by these outside forces. So the agreement, as I see it, is an agreement with yourself to allow those things to affect you or not, right? I mean, maybe that is why we're here, to discern, distill, and make ourselves so powerful. It doesn't matter. Maybe we're just having a dream. You're dreaming yourself. I'm dreaming myself. I'm sharing my dream with Amanda today. You're sharing your dream with whoever. Maybe one day you'll wake up, like everyone's had a dream at night, where they're like, "Oh my goodness, that was a horrible dream. I'm so happy it was only a dream." Maybe this life will be like that one day. You'll wake up and go, "Wow, that was crazy. What a crazy dream you had being Lorenzo." And who knows what I've heard the dreamer and the dream. Depends, one of the other modalities of religion, we'll say, or belief that Amanda talked about is the Toltec one, that we're not even doing the dreaming. Something's dreaming us, and we're just going along for the ride. So who knows? But I know if I listen to my heart and I make a life I like, the rest doesn't matter. And when it doesn't matter, I hate chemtrails. I hate all this stuff. I don't like any of this nonsense, obviously, but what are you going to do, huh? Other than pick up your own life, pick up your own self, and listen to your own heart. And I have found that's the best solution for anybody. That's what I'll
And
distill this conversation down to.
yes, and also if it's something that is in our reality, we've done that process, say, of changing the way we are choosing to view what's happening, and it's still persistent, when things like that happen, then I pay attention to maybe there's something I'm supposed to do or learn or be a part of. So again, I don't look at it like, I mean, I have I have gone through all the stages. I think you just allow yourself to go through the mistaken stages and just know it's part of it. Like I'll go through the, oh, I hate it thing. Oh, they don't have the right. I'm angry at it. I don't want it. I resist it. I'm resisting. I'm putting resistance energy into it. I want it stopped. This is unjust. All of those things will come. That's fine. I let that play out. It's not real. It's just the way that I'm feeling right now because those things might be true or whatever, but there's deeper aspects to it now. Okay, what's the functional level? What am I supposed to do about this? These are the things I feel. I have a handle on that. Is there a way that I can use that feeling to achieve an end? Am I supposed to do activism? Well, one of the things that I did is I wrote an article about it to expose it. That felt like its persistence in my life was telling me there was an actionable item that I felt that I had to do. And the more I listen to that, now it's not as the same issue. It's not forefront in my mind, meaning of being called into doing an action. My body, it changes. Doesn't mean that there's not action to be done. Other people will be doing their actions, but that's when you're really listening to what the goals are before you and what you're supposed to be doing. And it's not also ignoring things. It's not pie in the sky or like Pollyanna kind of thing. It's not that at all. It's more that you're not feeding into the energy of the illusion of whatever is being presented. You're not adding to insult to injury sort of thing, and you're not feeding the manifestation of it with your own power. You refuse to add in your own free will power to assist the manifestation of it. You know that that is there, and you're working on solutions. Like when I shift my frequency, the air above me will also respond accordingly, for example, which I've personally done. I had there were 3 or 4 of us on a little cliff. We went for a hike and started clouding over as we got to the top. And we were in Mexico, and the Mexican guide who was walking with us said, now let's try this. Let's sit here or stand. I think we stood for the most part in a circle. We looked up and he said, imagine now with your energy, it's going up very high and it's going to clear this cloud away. And in less than a few minutes, we had the area around us in a circle clear of cloud. And you can experience this yourself. You can go into situations where you can experiment with this. It doesn't have to be just some sort of hearsay. You can interact with your reality like this as well and see how it goes for you. Do your own scientific experiments, right? Now, someone had asked a question I just wanted to address, and then I think we'll probably wrap it up. Being, I think, now an hour and 40 minutes. We did pretty good there. And so one of the questions was just about some solutions for how to get out of anxiety in the moment, or what to do if you have anxiety issues. And a lot of it, obviously, I can't speak to that particular case because I don't know the history and other details, but in general, if you are having anxiety for just daily things like going out in public or going to the store. I mean, I started developing anxiety just because of all this nonsense that was happening, because I don't like being approached and told to do something, like put something on my face. And after a while, what happened is when people would do that, I would tell them to basically fuck off. So what would happen is I was getting pre-anxiety that I was going to have to like be strong. Every time I went out, I'm like, I have to be strong today, even though I don't want to be strong today. And I was resentful of that it was making me have to like put on my armor just to go out and buy groceries or do something that I never had to act like that when I used to be able to do that or go out like that. And I was finding that I was creating an anxiety within me so that I didn't want to go shopping anymore. I was avoiding shopping because I didn't want to have to get strong in order to just go shopping and do what I would normally do. And I had to find methods to deal with my own stress and anxiety. Sometimes it would be something like wearing sunglasses. It just made me feel a little bit like there was a barrier that helped my mind. It doesn't matter what it is. It was just a thing that will help you remind yourself that it's okay, and something that you can use as a touchstone in the moment to remind yourself that it's okay, that this too will pass and this is a temporary sensation. It's very similar to what you would say to a child having a temper tantrum. You just have to acknowledge the emotion that the child is feeling in the moment so that they feel heard, so that emotion is being registered by the parent. You don't need to stop them from tantruming. You don't need to do anything and tell them to stop or get them in trouble or whatever. You just need to be a listener and reflect back to them what you think you're hearing. Like, oh, you sound very frustrated right now. You sound very stressed right now. I'm sorry that you're upset. I hear that you're upset. But doing that to yourself. Oh, it sounds like you're stressed right now. Your heart rate's a little bit higher. Maybe what you can do is step off into the bathroom and maybe just relax for a minute, or just pause for a minute, or maybe you need to just park the shopping cart and go outside and get sun for 2 minutes, or maybe you just have to pretend you're looking at your phone while you do some really nice deep breaths and collect yourself in the moment. I had a panic attack one time going shopping. This was way before this whole thing was going on. And I'm very sensitive to other people's energies. And I was around someone who was getting panic attacks a lot. And we had just had a sauna, and also sauna heat can be a trigger for panic attacks. And my mother told me she would always get panic attacks from saunas. And I don't know if that's because that was in my head subconsciously or what the scenario was, but I ended up going to the grocery store and having a very surreal experience of having a panic attack. And you do feel like you're going to die, and it's quite a suffocating feeling. And that was when I first learned about Picana's size stabil, that I always have around now, just in case there's someone with a panic attack, because that remedy can stop it if you put it just on your tongue. It's a spagyric homeopathic blend, and it can really help you just regulate in the moment and get your faculties back so that you can get yourself to a place where you feel more safe or comfortable. And just it snaps you out of the heart rhythm and the heart rhythm feeling, like you're going to have a heart attack, which is what it feels like when you're having a panic attack. Okay, so that was one remedy that I found out by going through that experience. And just keeping yourself as clean as possible and always in detox mode. So you're keeping your magnesium levels high. You're addressing your adrenal fatigue. You're looking at your adrenals. You're seeing where you're in cortisol states. You're taking deep breaths before you eat anything, so that you can absorb your food properly. You're ensuring that your gut health is good so that you are actually absorbing your food, because gut health is brain health and heart health is brain health, and all of these aspects are part of your thinking process. And if your gut is off and you're getting bloating and gas and all this stuff, or, I suffered from IBS for years, and it was a total adrenal problem because it was a nervous system issue, and that was affecting the paracelsus of my gut. And so I would just shut down my gut faculties. I would be out and I would just tighten that. I would do it unconsciously, would tighten my guts. And then I'm eating snacks and talking and walking around. What do you expect? You're going to get bloating and gas and discomfort, and eventually that whole syndrome. Once I figured out what I was doing, and that it was stress at the core of it, and I unwound myself and gave myself supports like licorice root and vitamin C and B multivitamins and this kind of thing, I was able to cope better and get out of the cycle of it. So there's a lot of different ways of stress management, but catching your breath or being on top of the breath work is probably the most immediate and free thing that you have that you can use to realign yourself and have some self-reflection. But I think we'll start to wrap it up, Lorenzo, if you want to have any parting words.
Yeah, anybody that wants to come can come to the new now. I've got 100 videos there. I'm going to invite Amanda to come chat. I'd love to chat with her on the Socratic method. That could be an interesting chat for us to take things further. Amanda's got billions of videos. I'm probably exaggerating a little on how to help yourself. So, really, if you're feeling like you need to do something, whether it's 5G affecting your microbe, as I'm reading some here of this, that you really have to stop blaming, because my guts got better when my stress levels went down, when I changed how I'm viewing my reality, even though there's 4G, 5G, and I'm sitting in the middle of a busy city here. Yes, it can affect you, but in the end, you affect yourself more than anything can affect you. As Amanda said, to take a deep breath, figure it out, eat better, move along, see how you can do. Newagora.ca, come to my website. There's all the links are there. There's a whole bunch of information there. Put a lot of Amanda's information there as well, and a lot of beautiful people sharing beautiful things. And, info at newagora.ca. If anybody wants to write, anybody has any questions, I'm happy to point them in a direction that's helped me. Maybe it'll help you. Again, I can't say, but, I'm just underlining the fact that if you do want to help yourself to get healthy and heal, even without investing any money, as Amanda just said as well, there's a lot of free ways out there, and there's a lot of well-earned courses out there too that you need to pay for. I know Amanda's put some work into some. I know other people that have. I know I have. So if you want to, go deeper and you want to reward people for the efforts they've put in to help others, well, I'd say that's a good use of your energy as well. And I wanted to thank Amanda for having me on. It's been a great chat, better than I had imagined.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Yes, always enlightening our chats. We like to go multi-layers deep, which is very valuable for everyone. And I really thank you for your insights and your wisdom. And someone was here. I'll put up. It's called Size Stabil. Yeah. So it is. That's the name, and it is on yumnaturals.store if you're interested in that. I know there's so much more we could say on this topic, and probably should, and we'll let time distill as we always do, and perfect the next time we speak, which I look forward to. And yes, maybe it will be about the Socratic method. We'll see how far I get on my own studies of it, because I only know a little of it from school, actually from studying philosophy. And it should be part of homeschool curriculums as well. And being that I'm homeschooling my daughter and teaching her the trivium quadrivium sort of format, meaning it's on non-conventional way of helping children get proper skill sets and their needs met. It's be perfect for new parents as well to learn that sort of style of communicating or coming to good solutions for your family. So, and someone asked about the eye serum. Yeah, sorry. I just gave this is a new formulation and it sold out like overnight. And but I just gave my staff the recipe, and they will make some as soon as the really cool roller bottles come in stock. So very soon. Thank you, everyone. This is great. We will replay the live probably on all of our channels and stuff later on. I think we were kosher enough to not get banned off of YouTube. Maybe we'll see. I never know if I've offended anymore.
No.
I don't really bank on it.
No, I'm happy to put this up on my channel,
yeah.
if that's okay with Amanda later on my YouTube channel, and let people get it where they want. So there's nothing but ways to find us, and that and everything else. So thank you so much again. Thank you everyone who's given us the nice thank yous. I appreciate all of the love and all of the support and all of the beauty that's coming my way, and I'm happy to share as much as possible going forward.
Absolutely. I concur here. And thank you again so much, Lorenzo, for being here. You can find me at yummy.doctor, at healingwithdmso.com, at yumnaturals.store, and at dmso.store, and also in Telegram and all kinds of places floating through this space. Thank you very much again, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening. And bye for now. We'll talk again soon. Bye. Stay true.